Hey, this is AJ. Welcome back to the Handyman process. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2025 Handyman survey that I released in January. I'm going to go over what the survey was, the responses to the questions, and then do a little bit of data analytics to kind of sum it all up for you. So stay tuned. Okay, so you may or may not be aware that I released this survey in a couple different Facebook groups to various handyman businesses across the country. So I received, by the time I closed up the survey, I had received 163 responses. So with that being said, let me talk a little bit about the survey first, and then I'll get into kind of the data analytics. What does it all mean? So if you participated in the survey, you're familiar with it. There's just some basic explanations. But I asked, I forgot, maybe it was like 15 questions. The year the business started, the country you live in, state, age, years of experience, gender, a bunch of different things, right? I go down a line here. Maybe it was 20 questions or 25 questions. That was pared down from a whole bunch of questions that I had in there previously. So we got some interesting data that came back, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit between the tool that I'm showing you right now, which is called Microsoft Forms. This is the tool that I used to collect the data, and it's got some data analytics built within it. And then in addition to that, I exported it out to a Excel spreadsheet and did a little bit further diving into the data that I'll go over. So that being said, I'm going to go up here to the present tab and walk you through a couple of the questions, just kind of the wave tops before we get into it. So the first question, the 163 questions we asked, I'm going over question number 1 of 25 here, was what year did the business start? So for the 163 people, 23% of them said it started in 2024. The interesting thing here in the takeaway is, 23 plus 18 plus 24. The majority of companies started in the last couple of years, which is really cool. Then you have a series of other companies that have been here for quite a while. So what that tells you is a lot of people coming into this space, or at least coming back to the space. I'll dive into that a little further on later. Second one is the survey was predominantly to the U.S., but you'll see here if I switch over to the bar, 96% of the responses were the U.S., followed by 3% of Canadians, and then I had one Australian input to that. As we break that down, I asked them to identify the state or the province that people live in. It looks like the majority of numbers came from Texas, Ohio, Colorado, and California. And then it kind of gets broken down. Again, I can dive in here and you can see specifically for your particular state or province. For the guys in Canada that are watching, actually fell into the other category. And I'll get into that, I think, in the data backup. All right, as I move down the line, age range, it looks like greater than, what is it, about 60% or so are between the age of 25 to 44, with a few other folks kind of a little later on here. This age, I'll couple the age data a little bit later to show you who's making the money, at what age are they making the money, what is their net worth, and how much are they making a year. It's hard to get that, display that within the survey here, but once I do a little bit of data analytics, just stay tuned as I get into it. I'll start to dive a little further into that. Moving down the line here, years of experience, you can see that gender, 96% male. By and large, 68% of the businesses are registered as LLC. I did not ask the question of, are you an LLC, taxed as a sole proprietor, or an S corporation? That's something I'll add to the next time I run this survey. Some people did kind of volunteer that, but I didn't give them the option to kind of click both. So takeaway is most of the businesses are an LLC. I will tell you, if you're a part-timer or just getting started, that's not that big of a deal. As you expand and grow, and maybe some of your assets and the capital that you have invested starts to grow, then maybe this becomes a little bit more important. In my opinion, it's more important to have general liability insurance in place before you get to a limited liability company or forming a limited liability company. Going on to the next one, how many people are employed by the business? By and large, 64% is just a one-man show. Same with me. Then as we get further down, you'll see that it gets broken out. Some companies are running some pretty significant crews. 90% are running it from home. 78% are doing it full time. 21% are doing it part time. I'm currently part time, but stay tuned. I may be going full time here shortly. As that progresses, there's some things going on in my life that may make that happen. So keep your fingers crossed that that happens. And I may be jumping over to the full time side here fairly soon. Then I ask people, what are you doing in your day jobs? Again, this will be summarized in the data that I'm showing you. I'm going to provide it. There'll be a link down below in the description where I'll provide all this data for you. So you can kind of do your own slicing and dicing and dive a little further into it. And with that being said, if you're getting any value out of this video, it really helps me out if you give a thumbs up. Let me know that I'm on the right track and I'm providing information that's useful to people. Okay, moving down the line. Where are people doing most of their work? You'll see that this was a multiple choice question, so people could pick and choose different areas. But it looks like the top one was just general home repair, followed by carpentry, and then drywall, and then kind of down the line there. So a little bit all over the place, as you would kind of expect from a handyman business. Where's most of the business coming from? Most people said it's coming from homeowners, followed by these other categories. In this particular question, I just asked them to kind of rack and stack. Revenue, what are people making? Again, these numbers right now, it told me that 32% of the respondents of the 163 people who responded are making this kind of money between 100 and 250. But that gets lost if you don't have it in the context, well, how many employees do they have? How long have they been in business? How old are they? And that's where the data analytics that I'll show towards the end of the video will kind of dive into that a little further, so you can kind of see where you stand. And that's one of the reasons of this survey. People are always curious, where do I stand relative to other people? Am I average, below average, above average? So it just kind of gives you the ability to kind of calibrate yourself and see where you're standing. Same thing with the how much did you pay yourself last year? You'll see these in the numbers that fell out. Interestingly, 11% less than $5,000, 10% 50 to 60. This is another hot topic, right? There's certain tax strategies that can be at play here where people are paying themselves less but still making a ton of money, right? And you want to consult a CPA or some type of tax strategist on creative ways to manage your money. I'll leave it at that. This was probably the most interesting question. The one I got the most feedback on was net worth. Where are people sitting net worth wise? So I asked them, I provided some ranges, negative net worth all the way up to greater than $1 million. And the cool thing is, we have some folks out there with a negative net worth, and that's not a big deal. So if you're in that boat and you're like, oh man, I'm far behind. We were all there at some point, right? So it's not something that it's detrimental. You can dig yourself out of that. And this gives a little bit of inspiration that, hey, there's 17% of the folks in this survey that have a net worth over $1 million. And you'll see again, as I break the numbers down later, what ages are they, how many people do they have in their business, so on and so on. I'll kind of give you a sense of where they're sitting. And I'll also say that I did not ask the question of, did being a handyman give you such a high net worth? But people did volunteer some of that information. And what basically the feedback I was getting is a lot of people became a net worth millionaire early on in their life, or at least got the snowball rolling. And I'm an example of that, right? I started investing when I was in my late teens, and because of those investments, it put me at a higher net worth. That was long before I got into the handyman business. So a lot of people find themselves in that situation. Takeaway here is that it's possible. The younger you are, the easier it is. The older you are, the harder it is if you're not there already. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. Moving down the line, what platforms are people using? This is just a sense, like me personally, I have a website. I have Google. I'm on Bing. I'm on all these actually, except Angie's. And it looks like almost everybody has a Facebook business page. And then followed by, what do we got? Google and websites and so on and so on. And as you poke around, maybe you'll see, okay, the guys that have the high net worth, the guys that have, or the companies that have the high net worth, the companies that are making money, the companies that are paying themselves, what do they have? So you can kind of go back and look at that data and maybe make some moves on your end. I was also curious, if you've seen some of my previous videos, I talk a lot about running lean operations. I talk a lot about saving money and doing things yourself. And one of the things that I teach is build your own website. It's not difficult to build your own website. It's fairly simple. I have a video on how to build yourself a free handyman website. You just have to pay a small monthly fee for kind of the Google workspace that kind of comes along with it. But what you'll see here is 70, 73% of the businesses are paying less than $50 a month for their websites. Some of them are paying over $100. Again, this is a relative thing. If you're pulling in millions of dollars, this is nothing to you. If you're only making $5,000 a year, that could be something to you. So just to see where people sit, I see this question all the time in the groups, so I figured I would just throw it in here. And in terms of CRM, where are people sitting? I'll go back to the tree map here. Almost everybody, or not almost, the majority is Mark8. In the handyman space, the majority of people are using Mark8. I had this other category where people have said, I'm doing my own thing, whatever it may be. The next biggest category was Jobber and QuickBooks, and then it goes down a line to a few other ones. Takeaway here, the two primary ones are Mark8 and Jobber. And I see people flip-flopping back and forth between some of these. I see more people actually go Mark8 to Jobber and then Jobber back to Mark8 or Jobber to Mark8 than I see Mark8 to Jobber and staying there. That's my casual observation. I think it's because of the cost of Jobber, but I haven't dived into that much. If you've done that, if you're one of the people that have jumped back and forth, please drop a comment down below. Explain to people why did you, and maybe you went the other way, opposite what I'm explaining. Anyway, if you have a story there that you want to share with people, please drop it in the comments so that people can learn from that. Moving down the line here, business banking. I was surprised by this actually, that 74% are local banks or credit unions. I'm an online guy, so I just assumed a lot of people are online, but only 14% online. And then this other category is, I asked people if you had a recommendation for banks, what do you recommend? So you'll see that on the follow-on data. In terms of what vehicles are people using, we got trucks, vans, cars, and trailers. Trucks being the primary thing. This was one of those questions where you could choose multiple choice too. So some people said, I got a truck, I got a van, and I got a trailer. But looks like 54% of the people are driving a truck. And that's what I personally do as well. It just seems to be the most versatile. In a perfect world, I might have a van, but I got a truck. And I think the truck's just cooler. All right, favorite jobs. You can dig through the data to see that. This was an interesting one, most profitable job. So this data comes in, right, and it's all over the place. So part of my data analytics is I got to go, okay, this guy called it drywall, this guy called it sheetrock, this guy said drywall repair, this guy just said drywall. I got to use data analytics to say, okay, if you mentioned any of those terms, it's all drywall. And so that way I can kind of sum it up to show people what most people are saying their profitable areas or categories are. Then I asked people for any other information, and that's about it. So now I got all that data, right? Now what? So I export that data out. I hit a little button. It goes into Excel. And then in order for me to share it with you, I push that data into a link on Google Drive. And when I share that link with you, what happens is a Google Sheet pops open. So this is what all that data, this is the 163 data collections that I got. This is kind of what it looks like. There's a link up here to kind of how I collected the data. If you want to go back and see that video, feel free to go ahead and see that. But let me see if I can shrink down here a little bit. Okay, yeah. Let me shrink down a bit here and then start to show you. Now I start to bring all that data into a picture that maybe is a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so the first thing of the picture here is I took all the data and I put it into this table. And what this table is doing is it's doing a couple of things. As you walk down, the headers might change a little bit, but just bear with me. We're going to go top to bottom, kind of left to right, and explaining everything. So the first thing I wanted to see is, okay, what years did the businesses set themselves up? So I mentioned before, we had this cluster here, right? 23, 30, and 39 in 2022, 2023, and 2024. But you can see this was the whole spread. If I divide all this out, one business started in 2000, one in 2001. If there were no years, I just excluded them. But now you see kind of the spread, and the hump if you will, in the data is in this later time period. So a lot of people coming into this space now. Then as I start to break down what are the age ranges, you can see, okay, this is the age ranges. We have the spike here in the 34 to or 35 to 44 range. So you can kind of see where you sit. Gender-wise, we had 6 female responses and 157 male responses. Years of experience, you're starting to get the picture. So as I scroll down this, you're starting to see where did all the data points fall out. This is that area where I talked about LLC being the primary structure. How many people are you employing? So I said the majority had one employee, right? So again, how many people employed by the business? 107 people said they employed one person. And as I start to scroll down here, we got 4 people have 4 people. This one has 3 different businesses have 8 people. One of them has 44. Way to go. That's hopefully your numbers are pretty high. And if you're curious of, okay, well, the guy who's got 44, what are his stats? You can come over here to the raw data. And if you scroll over to, how many people, let me hit a filter on here. Data, create a filter. All right. So now, all right, there we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, you can start to see this was the 51st response to come in. The business was established in 2019. It's in Texas. The owner is 35 to 44 years of experience. So for anybody that you're curious about as we're digging through the analysis here, you could just do that. You can come over here to the raw data. You can also get into pivoting the data. I'm not going to get into a video about that. If you know anything about data analytics, you could just basically move the data around a bit. And if you're really curious about a specific situation for you, just leave a comment down below, and we can meet up on Zoom or something. I can walk you through it. Anyway, I wanted to make that point that if you're curious about any of these things, you can just dive over there and do that. Okay. As we start to move down, this is an interesting one. I ask people, if you're doing part-time, what are you doing in your day job? So these are the day jobs. You can kind of scroll through here. So maybe you're in one of these day jobs. You're like, oh, okay, there's another firefighter, or there's a home inspection guy, or a hotel manager. Just know that you're not alone there. As I move down to primary services, client types, marketing platforms, here's where you can see a little bit kind of further into what are people saying. And in this particular case, I just stacked it from most people have a Facebook page down to, who's and some of these other things that I wasn't too familiar with. Then as I start to go down, again, more and more data, the same stuff I was showing you on the previous screens. It's kind of all down here in the bottom. I asked people what their favorite jobs were, and this is what I got. And then I asked, this is where I did a little bit of that data analysis of most profitable jobs. So I had to do a lot of cleanup there. And what I ended up finding out is, as per the survey responses, 17% of the responses said that their most profitable jobs are electrical jobs, followed by remodels, drywall, plumbing, and then kind of down the line here. So if you're curious, if you're maybe doing mounting or fencing jobs, maybe you want to give a shot at some of this other stuff and see if this data is true. If you're going to start making a lot more money, and perhaps you could reach out to people if you're in the category that's making a killing in electrical. Drop a comment down below. Let the guys know how you're doing it. And if you're on the other side here and you're curious, again, drop a comment. I encourage people to kind of talk and dialogue back and forth in here. I also ask people for straight up input. So this is unfiltered. This is what the input that some folks gave back to me, which is right here. Okay, so that's most of the raw data, a little bit of data analytics on that. Now I'll dive a little bit more into some of the analytics. So to kind of keep it simple, I have 2 different tables here. The one I just went over on the left-hand side, and then now the one I'm going over here. So here's a breakdown of geographically dispersion, where are people working at, so you can kind of see those numbers. Again, we saw that Texas was the top number before. I happen to live in Texas. Go Texas. And as we go down here, I put this other chart in here. I may have to move my screen here. And this is where I tried to sum up what I thought was probably some of the information that might have been most useful to people. All right, sorry about that delay. I was having some technical issues here on my end. But as I move my camera out of the way here, this is where I kind of started to sum things up. Is this table here? So what you see here is I took the number of employees by age range, and most of the stuff is by age range. So you can see, okay, who's got the most amount of employees? How old are they? Well, it's actually the younger guys, right? 25 to 44. Those are the guys that are running the big operations. And then you start to see, okay, the ones that are running the one man shows, what do they look like? You can see that 40% of them or 40 of them are here, but you can see, there's a couple guys in there 60 over 65. Go go seniors on this stuff. That's pretty awesome. And then you can see the spread. So take a look at what your age is, see where how many people are different employees that people have at those particular ages, just for your awareness. In terms of the gender, how did that fall out? You can see the spread down here. Again, the majority of folks being in the at least the males being in the 25 to 44 range, and then the females in the 35 to 64 range as I look up and down here. In terms of the full-time, part-time guys, is there a leaning towards one or the other if you're full-time or part-time? Not particularly. It seems to be a pretty fairly flat spread for the part-time guys, and then for the full-time guys, it leans more towards the younger crowd. Now we start to get into the dollar numbers, the things that are most appealing or interesting to people. So you start to see here, okay, who's making the revenue? Keep in mind, revenue is just total money, right? It's not a measure of full profit. But you'll start to see, okay, the bulk of people are making within this range here, the 25 to 54. They're making kind of this kind of money, and you can start to say who's making the big bucks here. You can say, okay, well, this is how old they are, the guys that are making the big bucks. Then as I go down here a little bit further, same type of thing. You can start to see, okay, how much are these guys paying themselves? So if we take an example, if we say, okay, we had three people in this area that are grossing over $1 million. They're 25 to 34. If I dove back into the data, I can filter that stuff out, and I can find out, okay, if they're pulling that kind of revenue and in this kind of age, how much did they pay themselves last year? And you may be interesting, right? Maybe they paid themselves a lot. Maybe they paid themselves not a lot. Again, if you have thoughts or comments on that, me personally, I don't pay myself a lot. Because I try to maximize my business deductions and expenses to the greatest extent that the tax law allows. And as a result of that, the amount of money that I actually pay myself and pay income tax and self-employment tax on goes down. And I strive for that every year. I'll never get to zero. Some people say, hey, you want to pay yourself zero. I'm just not capable of doing that yet. And the thing about taxes and saving money, it's more about a risk thing. How much risk are you willing to absorb in terms of getting audited and being able to prove that those things are legitimate, right? So I ask myself these questions, and the things that I feel like I could take risk on, I do, and the things that I don't, I don't. But everybody has a different risk profile. That's the takeaway there. The final piece here is, out of everybody here, who's in terms of net worth, who's making the money, who's the negative net worth, who's the positive net worth. Interesting here is you see the spreads here, right? So these three categories, 8, 9, or 8, 8, and 9, the majority of people that are making over $1 million are somewhere between 35 and 64, which is kind of what you would expect. But they got a couple here in the younger range, which is really cool and awesome. So anyway, this is the data. I'll be dropping a link down below in the video. Hopefully this is helpful and useful to you. I'll be running this survey. I'm planning to run it every year, probably around the January timeframe. So if you like it, please go ahead, give it a thumbs up. Let me know, share it on Facebook or other places so other people can kind of see this data who may be interested in it. And stay tuned for the next video. Thanks. Bye.